So in June 2025, John Bone Jones has resigned his world championship, and he's now vacated the title. And the interim champion, Tom Aspinall, is now the full champion. Tom Aspinall presented challenges to John Bones Jones that he'd never faced before. Aspinall is far faster than anyone that Jones has ever fought before. And I think it's important to note here that you could argue that Tom Aspinall has actually retired John Jones. John always had this great genetic advantage over most of his opponents. He was much taller and he had a much longer reach. And he used that longer reach in a very precise way. He had a great positional strength, of course. He doesn't have those genetic advantages over Tom Aspinall. And that's why he chose not to fight him. Did he avoid fighting Tom Aspinall? Yes, he did. Now, this is an interesting scenario we face now. So we have a new full MMA heavyweight champion who's actually beaten many of the top 5, top 8 in the division. So who's he likely to face for his first defense? An outsider must be this guy here. But let's just remind ourselves. Tom has a unique MMA record. He's had 18 fights and he's only lasted 41 minutes of contact time with his opponents. This is Jailton Almeida, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Now, he's a very, very strong possibility to get the first fight, because I think it will be far more interesting for the paying public to see Aspinall versus Almeida than to see Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. I think that fight would probably put a lot of people to sleep. So let's just remind ourselves, Aspinall's record is quite outstanding. He's had 18 fights, and I think he's had about 9 fights in the UFC. His only losses against Curtis Blades when he went into the fight with a long-term leg injury and he damaged it within the first minute of the fight. He has since revisited that loss and got a victory. So he lost to Curtis Blades at the O2 Arena, and he beat Curtis Blades at the O2 Arena. He's also beaten Pavlovich, who's a fearsome fighter, and Volkov, who has recently become into his own as a very outstanding fighter. So this is a pretty good CV from Tom Aspinall. Now let's look at this Brazilian martial artist, Jailton Almeida. This is a picture of him submitting Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and he used all of his grappling submission skills in that fight to get the victory. Now he's got a pretty accomplished record. He also lost to Curtis Blades. He has had 6 round 1 finishes. He's an expert in submissions and TKOs. He doesn't have the bulk, violent striking of someone like Tom Aspinall. So comparing their styles and strengths, well, obviously we know that Tom Aspinall is a strike-heavy, explosive finisher. He holds the UFC record for the shortest average fight time at around 2.02. Tom has a well-rounded grappling game. Even though he's the supreme striker, he's also an extremely skilled boxer, an extremely skilled wrestler, and very, very proficient at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because his father was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu trainer. Tom has absolutely fabulous, almost perfect takedown defense. Now, Almeida is the product of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu traditions. He's an elite grappler and he's a pressure wrestler. He has a high finish rate because he has 6 first round finishes in the Octagon, often via a TKO or a submission. He's not the biggest of guys, but he has bulked out in recent years. He's about 241 pounds. Now, what can we say in terms of the key battlegrounds? Well, this is obviously a ground versus a stand-up. Almeida's game plan is clear: take Aspinall down early and control him. Aspinall's has several game plans, but he'll probably want to keep it standing and just go for a fast finish. In terms of durability and scramble, IQ, Aspinall has never faced an elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wrestler on par with Almeida's level, so he will be tested in heavy grappling exchanges. Almeida should refine his takedown entries to avoid overcommitment. Of course, we can say that Aspinall needs to capitalize with early strikes, and Almeida must close the distance smartly. What about the implied value bets? Well, if Aspinall will win if he keeps it standing, Almeida has a chance to win. I don't think it's a very large chance. He has a chance to win if he sticks him to the mat early and dominates positionally. How could they change their tactical approach to be more successful? Well, sometimes Aspinall needs to add a little bit more cunning to his takedown attempts. And also Almeida needs to change his takedown entries. Final take, this is a classic striker versus a grappler. I have no doubt that this is a matchup that if it takes place, and we don't know with certainty it will, that Tom Aspinall would win this matchup.